Now, we, in fact, in this evil world that we are embraced in, this has been something within our own nation going on for several hundred years. But taking a step back, our Christian values were not the problem, as the media and the left and the communist and Antifa and all these others referring to us as fascists. It's the corruption of those values by the Masons and the occultists. Even today, since Christianity is still here and people are, waking up to the real issues we face here in America, that the true Christian stands, basically in the way of the occultist, in the way of the Masons, but giving us the responsibility to take up our cross, to draw the sword of the Spirit, to occupy, to make disciples of all men, to preach the gospel, to cast out demons, to heal the sick. And since we're not doing that, this is why we have a nation, other countries, the world that is in such chaos, because demonic has been allowed to run free, just as Antifa was allowed to run free in Chicago and Portland, places of Los Angeles, and this is a perfect example of this. So the demons are given a greater legal right to act out their ugly nature through the sinners. And so as they are lawless and behave in such manners that go against our laws, and with such hate and violence within their own spirit, that as they act out their nature, they're spewing, just like Johnny Appleseed, as he went around throwing apple seeds everywhere, growing apple trees. So we are witnessing a transition from demon infection to full possession. Sodom and Gomorrah went through this same transition, and in time needed to be destroyed along with others. They were not just the only one. Do not forget the demons of today were the same demons of yesterday. They have played the game of deception over and over again through the generations. Nothing new under the sun. The ones you have dealt with, that you may, if you have bad dreams, or they come to you and they touch you, and or you have depression and anxieties or thoughts of suicide or this raging anger, these are the ones that you're dealing with. They have murdered possibly thousands before you, haunting you. And who knows, since we really have no true timeline, it could be each demon has killed millions. But we know, that when we're able to take a step back, and I've talked about this before, if you have someone that is an extremist, and, that they will say right-wing extremist or left-wing extremist. But what I mean is someone that is so dogmatic about what they think or feel, not necessarily that they're in the truth or not, but that they're so crazed about it that they're not able to be still and know that God is God. That they're in a upset chaos full time, that they're just like you see some of these Antifa crowd out there, just like we saw the ones that were coming against the ICE facility there in Portland. They're insane. They're nuts. They have so much hate within them. It is amazing. Now, the other issue is that it isn't over. We know that potentially millions more will die because demons caused madness, sickness, murders, sacrifices, curses on future generations. It's going to continue till the return of Christ. And so it's really up to us and our decisions who we're going to serve, which way we're going to go, how we're going to behave. Are we going to be drawn towards iniquity, or are we going to be drawn towards truth? Now, the only weapon we have is the purity of Jesus Christ that empowers us to stand against the wiles of the devil. Now, of course, the devil is a finite being. He's not omnipresent. So when I make that statement, I'm simply saying that his demons and the other fallen angels is who we're really dealing with. If you're dealing with Satan himself, then you're in a different league than I am, that's for sure. In time, the ones referred to as terrors will be destroyed. So the ones that are demonized, that have come to a point where their conscience is seared, that they are now rejected by God because God sees them as an abomination, or the ones that have been fully possessed. Now, this means they're demons until the judgment will move on to someone else over and over and over again. Most likely on through their own family and on to the next generations. But it does not need to be this way. Demons' rights can be renounced. Their actions can be rebuked. Their legal rights can be canceled, and they can be sent to the pit. So generational curses can stop. Demon torment can cease. Your mind can be renewed. And it's part of the prayers that I do about your mind being the mind of Christ, getting out the witchcraft, the talons, the claws that are, into your brain where your mind is at. And remember, as I've said before, that your soul is really your mind, will, and emotions. It becomes who you are. It's your personality. It's who you are. And if you have a personality disorder, then it's probably either part of a generational curse. And I've seen people change, by the way. I can remember I used to fly to Albuquerque for, it wasn't Microchip, it was Intel. And I was a vacuum leak detector service personnel guy. I fix leak detectors. And vacuum is a very, very involved process for the making of semiconductors, integrated circuits, microchips, microprocessors. And so this was a tool that was always in demand for the techs to try and troubleshoot the equipment that made these products. And so I was always in demand whenever there was an issue to go and get it back up again. So I would fly to Albuquerque all the time. And I remember this guy that was a normal person. He was respectful. He was intelligent. He was personable. He was very easy to like. And a month went by before I ever got called back, maybe even a little longer, like 6 weeks. And when I saw him again, he was twitching and he was having a hard time getting his words out and all kinds of things. And I asked him, I said, are you on some kind of medication or something? He said, well, yes, but I don't know what happened. I was driving down the road, and then all of a sudden I had this extreme desire to take my car up over the sidewalk and start running over pedestrians. And so I've been diagnosed with obsessive, compulsive disorder. And so they have me on these medications. And it isn't, I don't think that the jerking, the twitching was so much from the medication as it was his demons. Now, this was just prior to me really getting into deliverance and understanding demons. And so at the time, I didn't have any idea what really was going on. But you see that from a normal individual to within 30 days to 6 weeks, that he was what people would refer to as being mad. He could not help himself. He wanted to take his car, drive up on the sidewalk, and start running over people when he was a normal person. So if I had known then what I know now, I would have interrogated him. I would have found out what caused this. Was this a timed generational curse? Have you ever heard of such a thing? Some people, when they hit 40 years old, the demons have been waiting, and now all of a sudden they pounce on the individual because the curse was a delayed curse? Or was there something, maybe he was involved sexually with somebody and there was a transfer of spirits? Maybe he offended a witch and was sent a curse to him. And so I ended up not being with the company not too much after that. So I don't really know whatever happened to him, and God bless him, because he really was a good person. But what a horrible thing to now know that you have absolutely no control over yourself. So demons' torment can cease. Your mind can be renewed. Your heart can be healed. Your sickness can be cured. Your sanity can be restored. If all of this is possible, why is this not an event in our churches on a regular basis? Now, Scripture even calls for people to come up front where the elders would anoint those that were sick. And sick can mean physical, it can be mental, it can be all kinds of things. So, has anyone ever heard of the demon tent? No, it's been a few years since I've talked about this. Not the ones at the Bohemian Grove, that's a whole nother thing. But in areas of evangelism where Christians have gone into countries, Central America, South America, some of these places have actually been regenerated, where an altar call is given on the outside of the church. Those who accept Christ move into the church to be baptized, then are taken out the back door to the demon tent where they are delivered of their demons. Now, when, like Cartagena and some of these others, the serpent, just as America means the feathered serpent, and reptiles are worshipped, and dragons like in China, that when you do a deliverance on these people, you get some really weird, very strong manifestations. You'll think that they're absolutely possessed. They'll be spitting and hissing like snakes and even slithering on the ground if they're not bound. And it can be quite a show. And it's not for the meek. It has to be those that are seasoned. In fact, group deliverances can sound like hell itself with all the screaming. But this time, it's not the people in torment, but the demons. Basically, it's their turn to get what they deserve. And so being cast out, especially those that are of generational curses, that have been there a long time, they do not want to give up that bloodline. And they will kick and scream like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum. So getting back to our country and the events taking place, such as the threat of the state seceding, which means having, that they will split from the Union, becoming independent of the federal government and the Constitution, thus creating their own laws. Now, we saw this in the Civil War of 1886, But shortly after, now Mormonism was already taking hold. It was already active. I found things that go back as early as the 1850s. But after the Civil War, with the trauma, brother killing brother, families being wiped out, you have whole towns that were burnt to the ground, and just the sheer death toll that took place. It was an article I remember reading years ago, and I don't remember where exactly it was, but it was a farmer's field. There was several acres. It was surrounded by a white picket fence, and the North and the South came to this particular patch of ground and basically engaged in hand-to-hand combat to the point that there were 5 bodies thick in this acreage. Now, who can comprehend this? Who can believe that there was such destruction amongst people who, by the way, would have been professing Christians? And so this has been going on for a very long time, and because of this, the trauma, and I've talked about this, that Buffalo, New York assembled a 5-story high stone asylum to deal with all the depression. I've talked about this, and we've talked about soldier's heart. That's what they called post-traumatic stress. You have shell shock, you have battle fatigue, and then, of course, PTSD. But since people were hungry for wanting to get back to God, or that were maybe possibly dismayed with God because of those things that took place, they were looking for anything, and Mormonism took hold, and it was established well with, let's say, in Ohio. Now, of course, most noted of this was Joseph Smith, but carrying on the doctrine of demons was Brigham Young. In a territorial government position, he held Salt Lake City as a non-U.S. property, otherwise he was seceding. Now, Buchanan ordered 2,500 U.S. troops to take it back, which was successful without a shot being fired. And so this is nothing new under the sun about California and Oregon and Washington coming together supposedly to secede from the federal government, which is, by the way, a violation of the Constitution. It's a violation of our laws. And so there's only one way to rectify this, and of course that is through military action. Now, luckily, that Brigham Young did give that up, but you could imagine, my understanding is that these 2,500 troops were also carrying heavy armament, that they surrounded Salt Lake City with cannons and were ready to level it. So Brigham Young really didn't have a choice. But also during this time, an event known as the Mountain Meadows Massacre took place, where more than 100 Christian settlers trying to cross the lands claimed by Brigham Young, they were massacred by the Mormons, a local Mormon militia, trying to really make it look like it was the Paiute Indians who did it. Brigham Young was charged for these murders, but was never held accountable for them. So my point, evil does what evil is, and that is wickedness. These settlers, all they wanted to do, and I don't remember if they were going to California or what, and by the way, the property was not necessarily on Utah. I think it was actually southern Idaho. If you get a chance, I know that there is a movie, I saw it years ago, and it's called The Mountain Meadows Massacre. If you find that movie, I would really recommend watching it, because it shows the evil of religion. It shows that because it's a cult. I'm sorry, that's what it is. And it's based in Freemasonry and based on all the other cult practices, and even some of the older Hebrew, not Hebrew of the Old Testament, but those things that were contorted, morphed into what we see in Israel today, which is not the true Israel. So we are seeing the same types of unclean spirits, if not the exact spirits, that cause the same murderous manifestations we saw during the Civil War and what took place in Utah-Idaho borders. Now, without repentance, we are doomed to repeat over and over again these same sins. Now, remember that no one is coming to save us. You see, this took place 2,000 years ago. When Jesus came, that was our Savior. He's the one who empowered us. He's the one that gave us the ability to stand against the wiles of the enemy. He's the one that gave us the authority over demons. And since the church, whether it's been through the Catholic Church, Zionism, and all these other doctrines that have contorted and twisted the true Word of God, that the true mission that we have been given to occupy the world, and as I said before, to make disciples of all men, obviously this has not taken place. But since as a whole, Jesus Christ has been rejected, here we go again. The same thing over and over again. It's really so there is an abundance of battle-ready young men and women to die for the cabal. And if Jesus is allowed to operate through the hearts and minds of God's people, they, the haters of the one true God, will fail. And so, just like any military action, when they are going to, let's say that we bomb Venezuela, or that, whatever. One of the main things that we will hit will be the communication, the towers, the mountaintop sites, the vehicles that are obviously already targeted and already identified as communication mobile command centers. They will be targeted. They will be taken out. So us as Christians, as the communicator of the gospel of Jesus Christ, it makes sense by their terms for them to take us out, because if we're not here to spread the gospel, then the warning is not sent. So double-mindedness, which is manifesting, it's a manifesting of lying, deceiving spirits. That true mental illness is a total demonic infection. Now, you can have brain damage. You can have people who were altered through drugs. But you must remember that demons are opportunists, and they'll always have a hand in anything. They're always in the details. So true mental illness is a total demonic infection. It does not mean the one will lose their soul. I want to confirm this now. Just because you have a personality disorder, just because that, even a schizophrenic has a part of them that desires and wants Jesus. But to continue them to behave in a manner that is unpleasing to God can disqualify anybody. Now, to have a mental illness, to have one that is not able to fulfill the things that God has assigned us, they're not able to carry out the will of God in full. And so a lot of people who are oppressed, depressed, that have OCD or ADHD to a point that you can't focus on something, maybe fibromyalgia to the point that they're always in pain. Now, fibromyalgia actually is one of the easier things to eliminate because it's really demons that have clinged on to the nerves, to the cartilage and the muscles of an individual, and they can be cast out very easily. And so with this, it shows that through the will of God, through the spoken word, standing in the authority of Christ, that we're able to reverse all of these things. So because you may have a disorder or a problem doesn't mean that you're condemned to death or the second death or the lake of fire. But in any case, you see where things have gone, how things are upside down, that the First Amendment being under attack and of course the Second Amendment with the gun laws. And so here we are coming to the end of 2025. Our country is like popping popcorn, one event after another, non-stop. So what happens next? Well, more demonization, more full possession. That I can guarantee you, as surely as the sun will rise tomorrow. So I do not know, everything, but regardless of the peace treaty with Israel, what I can say is that they are like a evil child with HD that is a issue that in their behavior they will start killing again. It's just who they are. When you see someone that and we can all do this. We can all, when we're by ourselves, behave in different ways that we wouldn't normally behave in front of people, but at least we have filters. Those that are demonized or demon-possessed do not have filters. And so whatever they are, if they have killing, murderous spirits, if they have racial hatred spirits, and I'm not talking about towards black, I'm talking about those that hate whites or Christians in general. They are serial killers. When one rejects the true God of the Bible in His Son, there is nothing else left but evil. One side or the other, dark or light, there is no in between, like a demilitarized zone, a DMZ. We can operate in this area for a time, but time runs out and we must make a decision who we are going to serve. Again, as I said in the book of James, you cannot serve two masters. Now, look at the senators who have dual citizenship with Israel. Who do you think they serve? It's not us. It's not God. So you, me, basically, if we're lukewarm, we're not really making a choice. So we can't be lukewarm. We can't be in the middle. We can't be in that gray zone. Now, if we are lukewarm, Jesus said that He will spit us out of His mouth. And that is not a position, I've said before, where He has said, "Away from me, I did not know you." That is a very serious circumstance. It means that, when He says, "I did not know you," it means He did not have a relationship with you. Just because you say that you're a Christian, you still need to have a relationship with Christ. And I've said before, going to a church and always hearing about God, well, that's wonderful. But if you're dealing with a church that the pastor, preacher, is a Mason, which God is he talking about if he's not mentioning Jesus? If Jesus is not in the forefront? For it is Jesus who paid the price, and we could not come to the Father without him. So Jesus is our primary. Yes, we can, give God all the praises, but never, ever forget about Jesus. Okay, closing. As I mentioned, I'm considering on Wednesdays to, have an open mic to answer questions, possibly with you as a listener, the guest. And since winter is coming and basically I've got the hay in the barn, there's not going to be too much else I can do other than shovel snow. So I have more time in my hand and to interact with you. And we'll just see where it goes. See how it works out. I'll put all this together. I'm probably not going to go a full day today. So in this, just think about what you may want to talk about. I'll confirm those that I will have on to ask the questions prior. And as I put this together, I'll keep you updated. Now remember, it is Jesus plus nothing. And when I say that, I mean that. Because if we involve ourselves in other doctrine, other truths, then it means that we have walked away from our first love. All right, I hope some of this has made sense. God bless you. And again, thank you.